The Building Blocks of Our Future, a look at quality early education, is a co-production of Regional Educational Laboratory Midwest and WFYI Public Media, with funding provided by REL Midwest through funds provided by the U.S. Department of Education's Institute of Education Sciences.
We know children in all 92 counties should have access to high-quality early learning, and right now that is not true.
We have several parts of our state and even here in the city of Indianapolis that do not have good quality programs.
Many states across the country have been investing in high-quality pre-K for a very long time, many decades, and Indiana just very recently is starting to look at this at a deeper level.
There is now substantial research from educators, psychologists, pediatricians, neuroscientists, and economists that all show substantial support for the impact of high-quality education on kids' outcomes. So there is broad consensus and agreement around that, and we have good research to substantiate that. The important indicator of that is that it has to be high quality.
Research shows that just attending an early education program is not enough to affect child outcomes. It's the quality of the program and the teacher-child interactions that improves school readiness and leads to lifelong success. Little Giants Preschool, St. Mary's Child Center, and Charity Childcare utilize different pedagogical approaches, serve different populations, and are located in different areas. Each of these programs are focused on providing the highest quality education to our youngest learners, regardless of location and socioeconomic status, and have received high scores on Indiana's quality rating system.
We have a lot of different entities that are providing high-quality early learning. Not one group alone can support our children, and so we have a strength of our combined capabilities working together to support our kids and our families.
Marion, Indiana is a small town that is a city, if that makes any sense. I'm from here, I'm from Grant County, and growing up, Marion was the big city. There were a lot of booming factories, a lot of industry, and unfortunately the industry has subsided. Grant County was #1 in the state in child poverty. Members in our community came together and said, enough's enough, we need to stop. We had a lot of discussions with amazing groups of community stakeholders, and in 1 month we raised just over $600,000 to expand preschool. When I started here 3 years ago, we had just 8 classrooms. This year, 3 years later, we're starting the year with 17 classrooms. We're providing and filling a need and a gap that was here in our community, but able to provide high quality preschool to all.
Sticky bubble gum, and it's stuck right to my. Where did it stick, Jocelyn? Where do you want the gum to stick?
Before Little Giants, I was nervous about what I was going to do with my daughter because we qualify and ours is free, and I'm thankful for that because if not, I'd have to figure out how to pay $80 a week to have her in daycare. It gives you anxiety sometimes, thinking, well, what am I going to do? Because you're working so hard and most of the money's going to daycare so you can work, and it pulls at you. You don't know what to do.
I love, seeing these kids come in and, they're basically at ground zero. They know nothing. And just seeing their change through the year is the best feeling, because when they walk out of your room, you're like, I did that. I helped them get to where they need to go.
I've heard people, they don't think that it's so great that a kid has to go to school that early and be in such structure, but I've seen kids that don't have it and they don't have that option, and then being here and seeing all the kids that do, and they learn so much at such a young age, and it's so great because they're sponges this little. They really are, and they absorb everything going on around them. So the more they can learn, the better, because then they'll have that and take it with them, and I think it's so good to have.
One of the things that we do here at Little Giants Preschool is we know not everyone wears the same size shoe. Not everyone learns at the same rate. So one of the things we do is differentiation, because we want no child to feel that they are having to wait. If they're ready to grow, we want to take them. I think so many times we think we're pushing them too hard, we're learning things faster. But we also know with brain development, these children are sponges. And at Little Giants Preschool, that's where you can bring in that academic rigor, but also make it fun. That's why our theme is planning with a purpose through play, because those children, if you peek into our windows, they're playing, but they're learning through play, and that is developmentally appropriate practice.
You hear a lot around in the media, and teachers have this feeling that academic rigor and developmentally appropriate practice really are at odds somehow. And I think this is a real false dichotomy and something that we need to address. When we think of academic rigor, we often think of language literacy and math. And so I don't even like that term. I like the term maybe readiness rigor or early learning rigor, because it really, we need to be providing rigorous in terms of really meaningful, engaging, and fun and stimulating opportunities to young children that support their skills across learning domains. And that includes language literacy and math, but it also includes science, social skills, self-regulation, motor skills, and it has to be comprehensive in nature for children to really develop the foundational skills that they need. And then that is the content, and we know from developmental science that children are capable of really sophisticated cognitive processes. So there's nothing wrong with learning the building blocks of literacy and math and science, but that doesn't mean flashcards and worksheets. And that, I think, is where that false dichotomy comes from. It's the mixing up the content with the method of instruction. And for young children, the method of instruction has to be play-based. It has to be child-driven in terms of choice of how they get to interact with things, and it has to be fun. But there isn't any reason that kind of math shouldn't be fun. So math flashcards for lots of kids wouldn't be fun, but playing with Play-Doh and figuring out how you're going to share fairly with this Play-Doh between 4 kids, that's a really good way for children to kind of learn how to kind of divide something up into 4 equal parts that is fun and engaging for them.
St. Mary's provides services for children ages 3 to 5 who live in poverty. 93% live in poverty. We provide this at 5 sites, and we see about 280 children a day. And our program is inspired by the schools in Reggio Emilia, Italy.
It's based upon the belief that children have 100 ways of knowing the world, 100 ways of learning and 100 ways of doing. That some children are visual learners and some children interpret the world through art, and we tend to teach in 2 modalities, math and literacy. We tend to stress that it's language, language, language. Well, there are other languages. And this is the way the child can show you what they know. It may not be in the traditional writing method, but they can show you that they understand something powerful. So that 100 languages concept started early on in their work.
Everything goes by what is of interest to the children. So there are tons of things they can choose from. Some children may choose to come to the studio and work on something in the studio. Some children may want to go outside. Some children choose to work on things in the classroom. The sand was never put out. They were just here and they could paint, but they feel free enough to get up and go around this room and get something that they wanted to use. And as you can see, they mixed the sand and the paint, and that was like an experiment for them.
Some of the programs that St. Mary's has is really, really good because it jump-starts them. It's like jumping a battery or jumping a car. It jump-starts them, gets them wheels turning, you know? So it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
the practices that are being done in Emilio Reggio instruction are based in good developmental science. Reggio Emilia, it's really an approach, it's not a curriculum, so it's also harder to test.
You missed your turn. Go into.
We also provide a 1 to 7 child to adult or adult to child ratio, so it's very low. We have bachelor degree teachers. We've worked really hard to get their pay up to being very close to what the public schools pay. We have transportation, we have social services, and also a food program. We provide pretty significant and rigorous professional development for our staff. In addition to being able to have development here, professional development here, and going out to conferences and that kind of thing, and sometimes even presenting at conferences, which is a different type of professional development. Every teacher here, every actually educator here has a coach that works with them. Over half the children that came to us last year were provided with scholarships from St. Mary's. And what that means is that we ask them to pay $5 a week to come. And of course, that's not the price of the service. So we have a family of donors that raises that money to allow them to come to school. Research suggests that children in poverty enter school a full 1.5 to 2 years behind. So what we like to look at is, where are our children when they leave us? What difference did it make that they came to St. Mary's? So when we do our last assessment of children who are going into kindergarten, we then do an analysis. And what we want to determine is where our children are when they leave. And I can tell you that historically, the average has been that 86% of the children that leave St. Mary's are at the correct, appropriate developmental age when they go to kindergarten in all domains of development.
So there was that landmark study by Hart and Risley that documented the fact that children in lower socioeconomic homes for sure hear way less words than other children. Children, when they start school at kindergarten, if they are already behind in certain domains of development, it doesn't matter what kind of school they're in, that gap never really closes entirely.
As a group, children who are living within poverty or impoverished backgrounds, they tend to come in with lower kind of early learning skills. But I don't think that that means that the type of instruction needs to be different for those kids. I think we don't solve that problem by saying that some children can be engaged in meaningful play-based activities and some kids need to be drilled with flashcards. I don't think that's that's a false dichotomy again of this kind of balance between academic rigor and developmentally appropriate practice.
Charity Child Care, 20 years ago when my father started it, was the first infant care provider in the community, in the area. Over 80% of the children that we serve directly live in this community.
When we first started going to Charity, it was much smaller than this, and there wasn't that many people. I remember Pastor Thomas, he used to come and pick us up from home. And those types of things, they mean a lot to us.
I definitely love what I do. You know, I never know what their situation is at home, but I want them to understand that when they come here, they have safety, a safety net, a place where they can be free and learn to grow. And I just try to incorporate that in my classroom. So you have to paint it. What color are you painting?
Indiana's Path to Quality system is what we use to characterize a program as high quality. So we currently look at levels 3 and 4 of that system, and providers access that system in order to make sure that their buildings are, a great learning environment for children, and staff have the tools that they need, and curriculum and other components of being high quality. Level 1, you're looking at your provider eligibility standards. So you're looking at the pure environment that the children are learning in. Is it safe? Is it secure? Is it clean? And then you look at levels on up. Level 2 is going to, you'll be moving into things like, do you have adequate staffing? And once you continue moving up the system, level 3 is more looking at the pure teaching and learning environment. When you walk into a pre-K classroom or an infant toddler classroom, do you see the areas of the classroom where you know children are going to be engaged in their learning and they're going to be working with adults who care for them? And then our level 4 system at the end is looking at national accreditation. And so we do have a lot of mixed delivery providers across the state. Our public schools, we have licensed child care centers, Head Starts, who are all moving into looking at that national accreditation as that highest level, because we know that if they are working towards that, they are going to have better qualified teachers, they're going to have staffing ratios that are at their optimal level, and that is a metric that we can say, yes, we're doing the highest level of quality that we can for children.
So what's the first thing that we do?
Look both ways.
Look both ways. Okay, friends. Very quickly.
That's my purple house.
To even begin the path to quality process, we had to change our operations from what we had always known to do to actually begin operating as a licensed center. So things that were not even required for us, for our building, for our staff, for our curriculum, for our environment, we had to then implement. And once we implemented them, we were like, why have we never done this anyway? So that was just to get on level 1. It was structural. We had to add sinks in every classroom where we served infants and toddlers, change out our lighting throughout the facility. It just wasn't bright enough. This building is a church. It wasn't built, to serve young children.
This is all hard work.
In order to even climb up some of the ladders, the director had to hold a certain academic standard. And so I even went to school, which bettered myself and then my staff as well. It makes me happy to know that there's a level 4 child care facility in one of Indianapolis's most impoverished communities.
Lots of quality and rating systems pay particular emphasis on the structural aspects of high quality, so teacher-child ratios, credentialing of the teacher, the number of hours per week that children are served, and things like that. Fewer systems are paying attention to the developmentally appropriate practices or those kind of process or how variables of quality. So what's the quality of the teacher-child interactions that are in place? What is the implementation of an evidence-based curriculum sitting in the classroom? Are teachers differentiating instruction among children? And that's a costly thing to measure. That means that we have to have independent, trained observers go in and watch teachers and then rate them on those aspects. The other thing is that it's kind of based on this premise that their parents want to know what quality is, and so they're going to only send their kids to places that are rated, and then that will make all child care and early childhood education programs kind of be part of the QRIS system. And that hasn't really happened in many states, so we don't have the uptake that we need in order to see the variability in quality and track that to outcomes. And then there has been some recent research showing that kind of what I would say is it's telling us that just access doesn't equate to good outcomes on kids. That the mere kind of being in a state-funded or federally funded preschool program is not the same as being in a high-quality preschool program, and we have to be paying attention to that. And it really, we should be focusing on the interactions that the teacher is having with the child and the content that is being provided and the opportunities that are being provided to children.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bailey.
What I hoped my children gained the most was the social, emotional aspect of the preschool environment. Academics are always important to me, but I felt like I did a great deal of that on my own, and they went into preschool already prepared. But the social, emotional, and handling their emotions, making friends, and making those connections was the most important part for me.
There's actually very good research that really shows that children's early social, emotional, and self-regulation skills are predictive of children's third grade reading and math skills over and above their kindergarten reading and math skills. So we have some good longitudinal evidence for that. There's also some studies of these kind of seminal preschool experiences and experiments that occurred kind of in the 60s and 70s, the Perry Preschool Project and the A.B. Sidarian Project, that really had a comprehensive focus on what high quality education was, and it really did have a strong emphasis on the social, emotional, and self-regulatory skills, and they really think that that was an important component for the long-term kind of life skill gains that those individuals experienced over time.
There's a lot of changes that are happening in a child's brain, and as you know, the brain is sort of the master machine. But specifically in the first 8 years of life, there's so much going on. It's not just genes and what's inherited, but it's also strengthened and nurtured by the environment and what happens day to day with that child. So those early experiences are so important. There's been one landmark study called the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study that was published in 1989 that really showed the link between adverse childhood experiences and lifelong health. So children who face adversity, who are not nurtured by their parents for whatever reason, those linkages in the brain architecture are weakened, and they actually suffer a lot of toxic stress. And children who have, one or several or more of these adverse childhood experiences actually are at increased likelihood of poor health through their lifetime. I think the focus on social emotional development in early childhood is so important because it lays the foundation for that child's grit, their perseverance, so that they don't get frustrated and just give up. Yes, we all get angry, we all get frustrated, we all have those negative emotions, but over time, we also learn what we can do instead, how to adapt to those stressful situations. And that's what we want our future adults to be like. We don't want them to necessarily face adversity and just stop and not succeed. We want them to keep going.
Sometimes we do things when we don't understand where children are that make children think they can't learn or that they think they're failures. And when you think about that a child's self-esteem is relatively fixed by the age of 8, and self-esteem is about competence and worth. And when you make a child feel incompetent or that their ideas are not worthy, you've impacted their self-esteem, and that will carry on with them. So when you think about how fragile and important those foundational years are, not only for cognitive learning, but how do I see myself? How do I see myself in the world? How do I see myself as a learner? That's really important work, and so that's why we need to understand developmentally appropriate practice so that children develop a healthy self-esteem and see themselves as competent and capable.
You have to make good choices here at school. Would you like it if someone hit you? No. Okay, let's go tell Sissy you're sorry.
Sometimes policymakers balk a little bit about the importance of emphasizing social skills and self-regulation skills in addition to the academic content. So I think, as researchers and as advocates, it's really important that we continue to really showcase that in early childhood education, it has to be comprehensive in nature. If you cannot work independently, persist on a frustrating task, or work cooperatively with someone else, you're not going to learn those foundational literacy and math skills.
Working with small children, I have learned lots of patience, lots of flexibility. And working with children makes you happy. You can come in and your day is not going good and they just lighten the mood and it ends up being a great day.
One day last year, I had a student that was really just struggling with their behavior, with writing their name, and one day they just it was like an aha moment. It just came together, and I think truly it was the work of myself, my assistant, the parents, all of us working together and helping that child, and it just kind of clicked. And it's just, you can tell, that's one of the things that's so great is you can see that your work is truly paying off.
I believe that children can become anything out of any environment with the right encouragement and the right foundation and people pushing them forward to be the best that they can be. And so that's definitely what we strive to do here at Charity and here in this classroom.
I would just say in general, the thing that I want to say most to parents would be an advocate for your child's education. That's what Little Giants Head Start taught me the most at such a young age for them, was that I am the most important advocate for them. If I want them to succeed, I have to be behind them.
It's like you have 20 children a day, and like they're all yours, and you want what's best for them, and you want to take care of them, and they frustrate you just like your own little one at home would, and it's great. It is. I love it. I've always loved kids, so working with them such close all day long it's great.
The Building Blocks of Our Future, a look at quality early education, is a co-production of Regional Educational Laboratory Midwest and WFYI Public Media, with funding provided by REL Midwest through funds provided by the U.S. Department of Education's Institute of Education Sciences.